So today we're going to be getting geeky about ads. Very excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming. And what I'm going to do to start is introduce you to our experts. So they are both from Model B, but we don't often let them into the limelight or showtime because Abtin spends all of his time building our ad tech, which is Blueprint, and Ellie spends all of her time optimizing all of our clients' campaigns. So today you get to meet them in person. So I'm going to turn it to you first, Abtin. I'd love a little bit of background, where you came from, how you got here, and then you can pass it off to Ellie.
All right. Super excited to be here because, like Ashton says, he kind of hides me in the back room. And today I don't have to hide in the back room. So just a couple words about our organization and then about me. I really love this organization. I had a big change in my career. I worked in the legal field for the majority of my career and switched over to the advertising world about 5 years ago. And it's been just such a welcome change for a million reasons. But, my background is that I built a successful business in the legal space. And we built a really nice piece of technology that helped lawyers identify evidence among hundreds of millions and billions of records. And it was very cool. Just learning all sorts of new things there, and then taking some of those learnings and applying it to a new industry has obviously been a challenge, but it's been a really welcome challenge. And so how does that apply to the world that we live in? As Ashton and I started to uncover where the challenges are for our clients and how they can do better in their advertising world, I really focused in on how to make a better data environment, how to normalize the data so it's more meaningful, and how to bring all that into a single, clean, crisp picture for our analyst team and for our clients, so they can steadily see where there needs to be change in the campaigns and optimize them, and also work with technology advances that are happening around the world and introduce those to the advertising space. So that is where I spend my time. So I'm gonna turn it over to Ellie.
Hi guys, I'm Ellie. As Ashton said, I'm a digital analyst here at Model B. I live and breathe all things social and focus primarily on optimizing efforts for our clients across many platforms. My background is actually in linguistic anthropology, which is all about how people communicate with one another and when it's effective and when it's not effective. This really kind of helps me build out audience targeting strategies and things like that. And then I pursued, additionally to that, digital marketing at Georgetown, which I just fell in love with. I think growing up in the very digital era, advertising and social media always just really drew me in. So I'm very happy to be a part of the Model B team and get to work with all of our clients every day.
Thank you, guys. So before we dive into the meat of this thing, we're going to talk a little bit about what Model B built and kind of what powers us. So I'll turn it back to you, Abtin.
Yeah. So what powers us? At our core, our company is a technology-enabled ad agency. So what that simply means is that we're really good at leveraging technology to drive better results for our clients. And our clients come from many walks of life. Really, we find that there's three major categories that we're deeply focused on because we are a performance advertising organization. So who needs the work that we do? E-commerce organizations, SaaS organizations, folks that sell things online. And then across the entire spectrum, you can imagine there's a lot of other organizations, and an example of the other end of the spectrum are nonprofits, associations, non-governmental organizations that work with us to drive very key initiatives. Those could be growing their membership. It could be to drive a specific issue out in the world and make people aware of that issue and have them organize around that issue. It could be to help legislation. So, our tool set, our environment that I'll share a little bit about here is multi-pronged and multi-purpose. I think it's really important to share that because I think that people think about advertising in silos, and we'll get into that a little more as we progress in this webinar. But the reality is the tool sets and the way the mechanisms we use, they're interchangeable, they're usable for many different purposes, and they can stretch across the need to sell something to the need to educate people and the need to drive awareness about very specific social issues. So consider that. So what makes us different is our application that we've built that really powers our agency. Yes, we have multiple clients asking us if they can license it and use it on their own, and we are exploring that option with some of the bigger media buyers that we work with. But currently, it's an internal tool that is used by our client management team to organize high-level major campaigns. Ellie and I, we're gonna go into an example of one, so you all can see what that means behind the scenes. But organizing them, establishing all the elements relative to the campaign, getting those elements onto the various platforms. We serve ads on many platforms. We do not serve on a single or two or five. We serve them on the platforms that are relevant to the exercise that we're performing. So, and what the system does is it normalizes all that data across the platforms. It aggregates the results. It pinpoints where we're successful and where we have challenges. It identifies where we need to optimize areas of the campaign, and ultimately allows our technicians to visually understand what changes we need to make in order to get our clients the best possible result. And all of that happens in real time in relation to Google Analytics, the platforms, and our environment. And so that's what Blueprint does.
And just to go back a step before we dive into this example, I think it's important for all organizations to recognize that assuming you can spend a specific dollar amount, we like to soft circle, $10,000, $15,000 a month. I say it very boldly and very simply. Advertising is black and white. If you have a product market fit, it will make you money. Now, if you don't yet have a product market fit, that's okay. Maybe you want to advertise to get data about it, like understand whether or not people want your thing or not. Obviously, that's not a revenue mission, but often R&D and market surveys and exploration is understanding how to make your products fit better in the market. So advertising is good for you. Everybody should do it. Obviously, me saying that is a little biased, but I like to see companies grow. So therefore, I like to spend ad dollars. So now we're going to turn it over to Ellie.
I'll take over. I'll take over real quick, and then I'll pass to Ellie in a sec.
Sure.
So if you don't mind going back, is it one slide back? Yeah. So let's talk about how we're going to lay down. There's a lot of information to share. There's a lot that it takes to build a successful campaign. So what we're going to try to do today is start at the baseline and work our way into the more advanced technical elements. And we thought the best way to do this is to make believe a scenario for a client. And we picked like a local flower shop because we want to drive home the point that it doesn't matter how big or small your organization is, you should be taking advantage of the tools that are out there for you. And by the way, if you haven't already started using the digital advertising world or the digital advertising toolkit, you are behind the ball, so get started. If you have and you are doing it as best as you can, that's great, at least you started. There's a whole ocean of opportunity for you. And so, yeah, Ellie, why don't you give us a little bit of background about this example?
Yeah, sure. So today our example is going to be just a local flower shop that's looking to increase their online orders for delivery in the DMV. So I'm sure that you guys are all probably wondering, like, what does a flower shop have to do with my business? Well, fundamentally, I think we can understand from this example that ad strategy can be the same as long as you're looking at the business and making decisions based off of the business to drive strategy in your ad campaigns. So whether you're an association looking to drive membership, an e-commerce business looking to increase revenue, or a SaaS company aiming to add more leads to your sales funnel, we can take the same approach that we're going to talk about in this example and apply it to your business as well. So to kind of kick that off, I think it's important to first understand what omni-channel advertising is. Ashton, if you would like to
Yeah, so I love talking about omni-channel. So omni-channel advertising is really making sure that people are seeing the same message on different platforms, no matter where they go. So it's like you're behind a corner and you jump out and surprise them. It's like, it's me again, buy my flowers. So no matter what, if they see you on Facebook, if they find you on Google search, if they see a billboard or an OTT ad or whatever it is, your message, or rather the way that you positioned your company to be appealing to them, for them to give you their money, that's omni-channel. So it's making sure you're following them around the internet with retargeting banners. It's just making sure that that impactful value statement that you have about your product is seen in every way possible, which
Ash, can you flip to the next slide? And I want to add a couple more important keys about omnichannel as well. The concept of omnichannel is nothing new. Omnichannel advertising has been done for decades and decades, right? We used to have ads that are in newspapers and magazines and radio shows, and then it turned into television, and then it turned into and billboards, and now it's all around us. The key in an omni-channel digital activation is a couple things. It's one, all about strengthening your brand. So the clarity by which you communicate your message across all the channels is a big part of it. So if you have siloed advertising happening in Google versus Facebook versus whatever, you're creating more confusion with your buyer rather than creating more strength among your advertising campaign. So that's one really important thing to note. And then the second thing about omnichannel is it has to be done. So if your strategy is Google and that's what your strategy is, you are missing the ball. And we're going to talk about why in really clear terms shortly. But I just want to drive this message home that if you do not use an omni-channel advertising approach, if you are not on multiple platforms driving to very specific results on those platforms, what you're doing is you are basically peg-legging your advertising approach, and you're not going to get the best result, and you're ultimately not going to get the best result for the dollars you're spending. So keep that in mind.
So I guess the next question would be, how do we achieve this?
Yes.
So for us, I think it's really important to understand what the customer journey looks like. Omnichannel advertising is going to enable you to reach your customers no matter what part of their journey that they're in, whether they're first learning about your brand, they've already engaged with you, or they're actually looking to make a purchase. I think understanding how different platforms and audience strategies can work together to achieve this is really how you achieve omnichannel digital advertising. So some key questions to sort of ask while you're choosing platforms and strategizing for audiences is, do you have meaningful reach? Are you narrowing yourself down, or are you putting your audience out there too broad? What's the
Ellie,
Yeah.
Ellie, let me ask you about that before you go further, because I think that's a really interesting one, right? So first of all, help define reach, because I know we're going to have a spread of different levels on the call. So let's talk about reach. What is reach?
Yeah, so reach is going to be the group of people, the audience that most likely that you're trying to reach. So it's going to be the broadest segment or the pool in which you have potential customers within, essentially. If you think about it, for our example of the flower shop, they deliver within the DMV radius. So our reach there would probably be the geographic region of the DMV, plus additional interest-based targeting based off of interest in flowers, bouquets, upcoming seasonal holidays like Mother's Day, etc.
Got you. So when you are looking at reach, tools like Facebook, Google, so on and so forth, they're going to help you determine that. They have tools inside of them. So if you go into Google Ad Manager, you go into Facebook Ad Manager, you're going to see that they'll give you an estimate on your reach based on exactly what Ellie shared. What audience do I have? What limiters am I going to put on it? Is it geographic? Is it interest-based? Are there lookalikes in the geographic or in the interest-based, targeting, so on and so forth. So I think that's really important. The reason it's really important is reach dictates budget. The easiest indicator of how much money you should spend on your advertising is directly tied to this variable, and that's reach. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of cover that. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
No, thank you, Abtin. And an important well, a simple way to think of it is who wants to buy your stuff. So this local flower shop in the DMV area, that's essentially the entire audience. Obviously, your reach expands dramatically if you add an e-com element, so you can ship to anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. So for companies who have limited audience pools, maybe they're executives in a certain industry, maybe they're people with a certain title. The cool thing about that is that what it means is you can spend less money advertising to them because there are less of them. You will spend more per CPM or cost per 1,000 impressions because the more you tighten the more you narrow cast, the more you get charged per impression. But that's okay because you're obviously doing what I think of as a reverse Super Bowl approach. Is instead of showing everybody in the country your ad, you're showing a few people over and over and over so that you can drive awareness of the fact that they want your stuff.
So Ellie, how does reach relate to the other components when determining platform selection?
Yeah. So you can think about reach also as you answer these next two questions, which is what is the intent? So where are your customers in their journey? Are they aware of your brand? Are they familiar with your brand, but maybe they're not in a place? Are they buying flowers for themselves or are they buying them for someone special? These are important questions to sort of ask while you're building out that strategy. And it can help you decide whether or not you're going to place ads on a platform like Facebook or whether or not LinkedIn is a better decision maker, especially when it comes to like SaaS companies or other organizations that are more professionally focused.
I think people really misunderstand this piece, and it's super nuanced because I learned it after many years of operating in this advertising space, and it's really important piece. And that is that the process by which someone buys things online or engages content online is it's a journey, it's a process. If they see your ad for the first time in a Facebook feed, it does not mean they're going to buy your product. In fact, a lot of times social media just helps elevate your brand and makes people aware that your product exists. I don't know if you guys fall trap to this, but I'll share a personal story real quick. I have, just like everyone else, ads flowing through my Instagram feed. And sometimes the folks that send me ads have really interesting products. And so what do? I remember that product, and then it comes up in a conversation, and then I go on Google, and what do? I run a search looking for the product. So notice that was my customer journey. I saw the ad on Instagram. I didn't interact with it, but then later I went and ran a search to find it, right? So when you're thinking about intent and what platform to use, you have to remember that the platforms are intended to do different things. So keep that in mind as you are determining your selection.
And the third question here, what is the strength of your brand? This is incredibly important to think about. So for anybody on the line who are major brands, that's wonderful. People already know who you are. And so what that means is that when you launch a new product, people already have a relationship with your name and your logo, and they trust you. So if you already have a huge brand in the market, it's very easy to launch a new product. Now, the exact opposite is also true. If you are brand new to market and nobody knows about you, you are going to need to invest a substantial amount of money in order to get known. And that is, as simple as a brand awareness campaign. Maybe in that campaign, you're talking less about what your product is and more about why you exist so that people can remember that. And then when they Google you later, as Abtin said, they'll be more likely to move through your funnel.
I find this concept to be one of the hardest ones for what I would call mid-market advertising companies to grasp with or understand. A lot of times people come to us and say, hey, we're not generating enough leads. My company is not generating enough leads, and we'd like to hire you to help generate leads. And so we start doing the research about their brand, and sure enough, one of the biggest challenges that they're having is that all of their advertising effort is focused on what we call bottom of funnel intent-based advertising, right? So they're spending all their money at the bottom of the funnel. Every ad says, buy my product. Every ad says, give me your email address. Every ad says, go to this landing page, give me your email address. When you do that, people are less inclined. And the reason is what Ashton said, your brand needs strength and it needs to be elevated. And that person that has interacted is the person you need to then retarget and get them to interact with an ad that says, give me money or whatever you're asking them to do. So Ellie, question for you about audience persona. When you're determining what platforms to select, talk to me about how, when the CM team brings you, hey, this is the client, this is what they're trying to accomplish. How do you go about the determination on audience selection? Can you walk us through, or audience persona development and audience selection, platform selection?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to consider sort of understanding the customer that they're trying to reach when deciding on platforms, and also when you're building out your reach, your audience targeting, et cetera. So you have your classics like Facebook and Instagram, which definitely reach a really broad audience. I think everybody at this point has a Facebook or an Instagram or some type of social media. So social media tends to be a really, really great channel to reach those larger segments. Something like Google search is going to be great to identify intent, those audiences, that part of your audience that is looking to engage more with your brand, learn more about it, educate themselves, understand what your unique selling point is. And then you have like new kids on the block, like TikTok, definitely skews a bit younger than traditional social platforms. It's still definitely being built out, but has seen tremendous success in terms of generating interest for TV shows, especially like online things via Netflix, et cetera. And then some other ones is OTT, like Roku and things like that. They have an enormous reach, and being able to target on those platforms can be really essential for some of our clients, depending on the products that they're selling. It really goes back to where are your consumers at? Where are you trying to reach them? What part of the journey are they in? These are, you're still going to keep cycling through these questions as you make those key decisions. And that kind of helps us when we're building out strategies for our clients. I think it'll help better understand some of these things as we sort of like walk through these questions for
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get to this next slide.
Heck yeah.
And just do a super quick example on personas and how it relates to platforms as well. It's pretty simple. If people are already looking for you, if you have a competitive product that lots of other people have, Google is a great place to be. And this is so dramatically simplified, I apologize, but you have to think about the mood of the people who are on the platform you're advertising on. So obviously, LinkedIn and Twitter are going to be a better place for B2B stuff in terms of mood than they are B2C stuff, which would be more appropriate for example, the Facebook and the Instagrams and that Google display and those sorts of things. So while you can always get brand exposure anywhere, it's important to think about, depending on what stage of the funnel you're trying to move them through, their mood on the platform that they're browsing when they see your ad. And now let's talk about synergy between click-through and conversion, which is exactly what I just said.
Yeah, and I think actually I want to add one quick point. I wish we built a slide on this, maybe next time. But, the idea that just like the traditional marketing approach had a funnel, and that funnel was broken into 3 major segments, all digital advertising, every form of marketing, every form of advertising still follows that funnel. We kind of mentioned this before. When a user does not know of your brand, or if a user has the wrong association with your brand, we have clients who, when we bring up their brand in user studies, or if we drive ads just to understand what users think about their brand, we find that there's a huge misalignment between what they want their brand to stand for versus what it actually stands for. So, Ellie, why don't you walk us through what are the 3 major areas of the funnel and how we can think about the platforms and how they relate to them, and then the click to conversion process?
Yeah, sure. So I like to think about it as awareness, intent and engagement, and conversion. It's I think you can really think about it as those three main groups. So for our example of the local flower shop, I think for the awareness segment, it would be really key to utilize Facebook and Instagram to serve as the broadest audience segment. They're going to enable, broad reach, be able to reach people who are interested in flowers or are looking to buy something for a special someone in the upcoming weeks. Utilizing specific placements like Instagram Explore and stories, which tend to have a higher click-through rate than standard placements. So really leveraging those really, really specific placements can also help educate people about your brand, teach them a little bit more about you. Maybe it's that you are local, that you're shopping small, that we have organic flowers, those sort of things, whatever it may be. I think that platform provides an immense amount of support in terms of educating your consumer on your brand.
Yeah, and notice that first part, as Ellie mentioned, she picked specific platforms exclusively to educate. And notice the ads. The ads are not saying, come buy our flowers. If your ad in that segment, as you think about your advertising approach, you have these segments. That first segment is intended to just establish a trust and a relationship with the audience and the consumer. So you don't want to accidentally seek too far an action down the funnel, because if you do, it's a turnoff, right? You want to be focused on, here's our brand, here's why we're cool, beautiful pictures, maybe they'll click, maybe they'll engage, and that's when they're moving down into the funnel. So what about the second segment where we're getting them to, act and they have intention? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so intent and engagement, I think can be really well captured in Google search for this specific example. As you sort of mentioned in your example earlier, people see ads on Instagram, but they might not interact with them. But if the brand left a meaningful impression on them, they're going to search for it. So capturing those individuals with a Google search campaign to get them to find out more about the brand, start the process of an online order, I think is really key. You'll obviously be going up against larger businesses like 1-800-Flowers in this example. So really honing in on those taglines or on the headlines and descriptions for Google search will be really key in this situation. So people looking to shop local for flowers, obviously using your own brand terms, etc. I think that really helps build out that intent and engagement segment.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about that middle band, you're looking at different key metrics. Remember that an advertising campaign is complex. The top segment is about, we want just as many humans to see and click on our ad. That's really what we're paying attention to. We're not worried about whether they see the ad and buy something. So when we're thinking about optimizing the ad, we're optimizing that top segment of ad just for the cheapest cost for the right audience to see it, the cheapest cost for the click in that segment. And what we're measuring is not how the user is moving around past the ad. It's more, did they see it? How often do they see it? What we call frequency, and those sorts of metrics. When we're in the middle band, we're looking at different metrics. For example, if we're doing intent-based advertising, as Ellie just mentioned, Google search is intent-based advertising. People have to have the intention to find you if they're on Google search. So when they run that search, what are we paying attention to? Did they click on the search? Did they land on the landing page? Did they pay attention to the landing page? How much of the landing page did they pay attention to? Did they click on a link in the landing page? These are all triggers that we start to identify as whether or not the user is showing us intent. And when we're measuring and optimizing the middle band, we're measuring and optimizing against those key metrics, things like time on page, click-through rates, so on and so forth, right? So let's talk about the bottom band, the actual conversion band, where everybody gets all caught up because they want as many sales of their flowers as possible. Let's talk about that. What is that?
Can I just pause everybody there and just make a statement to the world, and hopefully millions of people see this statement. If you skip awareness and intent, you're going to waste all of your money on conversion-based campaigns. it will just go away. And then you'll see that advertising doesn't work. And then I'll have to explain what I'm explaining, what Ellie and Abtin are explaining to you right now, which is the funnel.
Great point, Ash. Yeah. Again, a lot of folks that, are not Coca-Cola, right? They get caught up on this issue of, we have all these ads, they're just not producing enough leads, help us. And, a lot of times we tell them, well, for the first 3 to 6 months, the cost of your lead is probably going to actually go up a little bit, right? Why is it going to go up? We're going to spend money at the top of the funnel and in the middle of the funnel because we need more audiences that care, rather than just trying to drive a little bit more result for the ones that already know you, already are aware of you. Like, we get it, they know. So yeah, let's get back to the conversion step. Talk to us about that, because this is obviously really important, folks.
Yeah, so for this segment, we decided to go with display retargeting, and specifically retargeting those who have visited the website, have shown intent, but have not yet converted. So really honing in on that audience group, so really serving to the people that are going to be most likely to convert. Maybe they started their order and didn't complete it. They click through our ads, whether it be on Facebook or a Google search ad, but we want to make sure that they get the flowers that they want. So it's really focusing in there, optimizing our display creatives, so that way we're really putting our best foot forward and getting those final conversions through.
Yeah, and you notice here, all of a sudden, Ellie brought up display advertising. One of the things I always hear from, I want to call it junior varsity. Maybe it's a big statement, but I'll put it out there. I hear from junior varsity advertisers like, oh, display advertising's dead. I hear stuff like that, and that's just flat wrong. So no advertising is dead. Advertising, the irony of advertising is that the way advertising happened 50 years ago is very similar to the way advertising happens today. Again, back to the funnel. We have advertising that is designed to drive awareness. We have advertising designed to drive intent. We have advertising designed to drive conversion. One of the most powerful forms of conversion style advertising is remarketing. So if we know we have an audience segment in the middle band that has been on our website for 1 minute, meaning they read a page of our website, we know they're paying attention. They've dedicated time to reading that website page. So what do we want to do with them? We want to retarget them. And we can retarget them on many platforms, including display advertising. And the cool thing about display advertising is it's going to follow them around all over the place. They're not going to be able to get away from it. And notice these ads, they're totally different than the other ads. These ads are telling the user, come buy our flowers, because we know that you know who we are. If you didn't know who we are and I asked you to buy our flowers, you would laugh. But you know this company now because you've seen them in your media stream. You most likely clicked on something. So that's why it's appropriate to ask the user to buy something. Right. So really helpful. We could spend the rest of the webinar on this topic, but we're going to move on. And by all means, if you have a question, you can ask Ashton. I don't know how he set that up, but by all means ask and we'll pause. But I hope that helps everyone get a really clear understanding of how using advertising and using key metrics to measure success at each step of the advertising helps us really educate the best overall result for the campaign.
Exactly right. And people do build a relationship. I mean, people are brand obsessed, period, full stop. Like, we manage, so many campaigns where we see people freak out if you reply to a comment on an ad from a brand. They love it. Like, they like these beautiful logos, these beautiful things. It's way more important than we realize, because of the fact that we as a people are just obsessed with brands. So you can be a brand that people are obsessed with, but you have to make sure it's beautiful and relatable and built for your target audience. That's actually the answer to why so many logos for tech companies kind of look similar, because that's what the C-suite, it's the CTOs, the CIOs, that's what they want. So they're building the brands to relate to the CTOs. Another important thing, and this is why at Model B, we don't just run the ad campaigns, we also build the creative, and we help write the positioning, and we help write the messaging. The reason we do that is because you can spend $1 million and never make a dollar back if you're not properly positioning yourself to be compelling to the needs of your audiences. Brands must drive value, and you must tell people what that value is, what that value prop or that differentiator. Ellie put it really nicely earlier when she said, you know, maybe your flowers are organic, locally sourced, whatever it is. So putting those value props in front of people will help them to build that relationship. So Ellie, I'm going to go ahead. If you guys don't have any more funnel stuff, I'm going to go ahead and move us into attribution, because a huge question we got from all of our clients and everybody in the world is, okay, great, I'm spending $1 million on this campaign. How do I make sure that when my boss calls me or the board says, hey, you spent $1 million, what did we get? Like, you got to track it, which is what we call attribution. So Ellie,
Yeah.
Abtin.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on one sec before we jump into this massive topic of attribution. We are going to talk about attribution at a level that I think everyone will understand, and we are open to any questions folks have about deeper questions around attribution. One of the things Ellie is going to go into is what happens to the world of attribution when we get to cookieless, because it is right around the corner. In fact, just months away. So, just wanted to kind of preface it.
Yeah. So all of the great things about the funnel only really work also if you are getting good attribution. So is your website set up so that way when someone completes a purchase that the ads know that and they can optimize based off of that? As long as we're continuing to funnel information back into the platform so they can make those key decisions when targeting individuals, that's going to also be key. So what are we measuring in this case? With the flower shop example, it would be an e-commerce funnel checkout process. So, people added things to a cart. Maybe they, selected gift message, etc. Then they checked out. So making sure that we test that out multiple times and set it up in a way that we're ensuring that we can then relay that information back to your own internal reporting, but also to the platform so they can optimize on that event as well. I think that part's really, really, really key to ensuring success in a campaign. Testing is a huge part of that.
Yeah, let me kind of put wheels on the ground for folks that are out there trying to establish an attribution model for themselves. Right? First of all, there are many, you can make it as complex or as simple as you want. There's many different attribution models out there. There is first interaction attribution. There are last click attribution models out there. There's assisted attribution. There's weighted attribution. The list goes on. Good news for all of you folks. Google, if you are using Google Analytics, which you should be, or something very similar to it, they have embedded attribution tracking mechanisms, and it's fairly straightforward to turn those on and be able to measure them. It's not easy, so I wouldn't say that. It is straightforward though. You can Google articles about it. You can call us. We can help you. But as Ellie said, every one of your ads, as we described, has a purpose, and that purpose moves the user through a journey, which ultimately results in that conversion she just mentioned, which in this case is about a purchase online, an e-commerce purchase. So what do we want to see? Well, did the ad that brought someone into the middle of the funnel cause that person to return to our website and have them buy something? Question mark. And we can answer that question with a good attribution model. So attribution at its heart is seeking to drive very specific value to each segment of your advertising process. If you don't have it in place, it's like having an airplane without having the instrument panel, and you're in a storm and you're trying to figure out where to go next. So take this note home with you. Focus on building an attribution model, even if it starts very simple. Couple more thoughts about attribution. As I mentioned, Google Analytics has an attribution model. It's as complex as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be. In our world, we use a combination of first interaction and last click attribution for understanding how our ads are performing. As Ellie said, the platforms also want to know how the ads are doing so they can automatically optimize to the best performing ads. So if you have an awareness campaign on Facebook and it has 5 ads, and Facebook sees that one of those 5 ads has the most clicks, Facebook is going to automatically move more funds towards that ad among the audience, and it's going to slowly reduce the funds among the other ads. In order to get that set up, you have to set up a connectivity between Facebook and your website, and you do that through pixels. It's exactly the same as when you're thinking about how do we do a cross-channel optimization program. How do we know whether an ad is doing better on Facebook versus Twitter, or Facebook versus LinkedIn, or Reddit in the middle of the funnel? We do that by having a very powerful attribution mechanism set up. And Blueprint is a tool, our tool that we built that helps us do that. Yep.
So I was going to say, to be clear, I think, Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, our recommended pathway to attribution would be, besides hiring us, that's my number one, but it's Google's UTMs, right? So do they have everything? I mean, I think it's a free tool that just comes out of the box. You just have to learn how to use it, right, Ellie?
Yeah, Google Tag Manager is great. It's probably the best and easiest way to implement tags on your website, which are any type of pixel event that would fire on a specific action. So that could be a page view, a scroll length, a button click, a checkout process, a form submit. But really the possibilities are endless as long as it's on your website. And so connecting with that product, which is an out-of-the-box Google product, really easy to integrate with Google Analytics, is going to enable any company to manage their conversion tracking, their events tracking, and honestly get the best out of their attribution for any ad campaign.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's switch to obviously on a lot of people's minds is this one. Privacy is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I want to kind of give everyone a preface. There's a lot of noise in the advertising world about this. Here's what's going to happen next. Once this environment of cookieless advertising shows up, we're going to have a bifurcation of advertisers. We're going to have really smart advertisers that don't rely on tools that are outdated and processes that are outdated. We're going to have that category, and we're going to have another category of people that complain endlessly about how it's not fair and how privacy, this and that. And I would really just advise everyone on this call to focus on finding help on the other side of the spectrum, folks that recognize a need for deeper privacy while being able to identify how to target folks that care about the ads they're seeing. And it's very doable. So, we want to just give you a little bit of what's going on and then give you some, quick elements that you can add to your program to help you as we move into this world. Ellie, you want to kind of take over?
Yeah, so the first step is utilizing UTMs. And for those unfamiliar, those are parameters that are added onto the end of your URL that Google Analytics can translate into buckets. So essentially, this person came from Twitter, social, and maybe use a campaign name so they know what campaign you came from as well. The limit with UTMs sort of ends at any sort of multiple device tracking, since, if I'm click through an ad on my desktop and go, it's going to have that UTM, but let's say I later search on my phone, it's not going to know that I came back. And so that's sort of the limitation there. And with cookies, you have the ability to sort of track those users cross-device. However, as cookies become phased out, there's a few different sort of approaches that various companies are building out to help advertisers and also help consumers keep their privacy while also still retaining that personalization in terms of their advertising. One of the biggest ones is with the Chrome Privacy Sandbox initiative, and another one is the iOS 14 changes. With those, they sort of rely on browser information to be then stored, aggregated, and then relayed back to the platforms. So there's a little bit of delay in terms of the information sent back to platforms in that situation, but it is still sent back. It still retains user privacy, and it still enables advertisers to make key decisions on targeting and conversion-based tracking. Some other ones are the Turtle Dove proposal and the Flow C, which I won't go into a huge amount of depth on, but essentially rather than focusing on this user visited this site under this interest and it focused on this keyword, it will funnel that person into an interest group that's related to that interest, and then they become part of a larger entity that can be targeted. So this just kind of creates a little bit of some broader audience segments that help retain anonymity online, while still allowing advertisers to target people based off of their searching interests.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to share why this is happening. I think a lot of folks have questions. We're all marketing folks, so we obviously want to target this one person in this one place and blah blah blah. And the reality of that is we've all seen how not having a strong privacy layer can lead to disruption of our economy, a disruption of our country. So one, it's really important for us to get to this place. I'm really glad the big tech groups are starting to force the issue. And like you said, Ellie, a lot of great content out there about what Google's doing. Google's created an environment for you to test out different attribution mechanisms so you can maintain attribution without needing cookies. And right now about 70% of online traffic is occurring through Chrome. So, your likelihood of being able to maintain a lot of your tracking is in place, but you do need to make a change. So it is a good place to go research, and maybe after this event, we can send out some content relative to that for folks to read and understand.
So it sounds like the right way to get ready for a cookie-free world is starting by getting familiar and integrating UTMs into the environment, and then we just need to keep a close ear to the ground to make sure that we're deploying what happens next, right?
Yeah, I think it's key to work with someone who is capable in terms of attribution, understanding user behavior online, so that way you can achieve those sort of futuristic approaches to cookie-free tracking.
Very cool. So what, Abtin, did you want to bundle up some thoughts about how to build an environment for predictive and prescriptive once we've got all the tracking elements in place?
Yeah. So I'll share some ideas about predictive and prescriptive, and we're actually going to hold another webinar strictly on this topic because this is a highly technical topic, and I will give just an overview of what it means, how it works, and what's being done about it, both at Model B and generally in the world, in advertising world. And then we would recommend folks join that call so that we can get way down the rabbit hole and get geeky about how to do it, how to introduce it, so on and so forth. So the idea of predictive and prescriptive analytics is the following. Because we are generating so much data when we are delivering ads online, if you can imagine, one ad might be seen by 100,000 people, and then you multiply that times 10 ads, and then you multiply that times the different segments, and all of a sudden you realize there are hundreds of thousands of people seeing, tens of thousands of people clicking, and hundreds and thousands of people converting in your environment. And so statistically, that's a large sample set. Do you need that large of a sample set? Mathematically, the answer is no. Every scenario relative to the world of machine learning, which is where we're going to go, is different. And sometimes a single example can educate a machine. It just depends on the complexity of the variables. So what does predictive give you? Predictive analytics gives you a view of what the future looks like based on what's happening now. So very simple way of looking at that is if I have 10 people converting, let's go to the flower shop. If I have 10 people buying my flowers today and I'm spending $1,000 on my overall media, what does that mean for the future? Well, there are very simple statistical models you can apply to what happened in the last week, 30 days, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, to look at what the future next week, 30 days, 6 months will look like. And that's a predictive model where it helps predict what your results will look like in the future. The trick to setting it up correctly has to do with granularity. The term granularity refers to how far down can you see result data. Do you see it today? If you're using out of the box Facebook, you can see granularity at the ad level, but it's very hard to compare that to granularity on Twitter. So if you're using both, being able to look at how one ad on Facebook's doing versus that same ad on Twitter becomes a challenge. So you have to have an environment to be able to show you at the ad level what's happening. And in fact, for really sophisticated media buyers, it's further down than that. It's actually what URL are we sending them to for that ad. Sometimes we're sending them to 3 or 4 URLs. We call that the UTM level granularity, right? Ellie mentioned if you want great tracking, you need to do it at the UTM level. So, the deepest level of granularity we can get is at that UTM level. And so if you want a very strong predictive model, it needs to be based on that lowest level of granularity. So that's predictive. It shows you what will happen in the future, right? And that's really important. Like, I want to know what happens in the future. I want to know what happens to my ads in 30 days. That's really, really key because it helps you align your budget. It helps you make changes. If your campaigns are not performing well, it's going to tell you the results are going to go down, right? So it's really important in your advertising environment. The second one is even more powerful, and this is one that we've been working on for quite some time. And it's the ability for the environment, the machine, to tell you how to change your ads to get the result in the future that you want. And that's called prescriptive analytics. Both of these are a form of AI. AI is also a misunderstood term. Anytime a machine crunches information for you and gives you an output is really a form of AI because it is not a human intelligence that's doing it. It is a machine intelligence doing it. The sophistication of AI is what really matters. And prescriptive analytics is a fairly in-depth sophisticated model for machines to give you information. So how does it work? The way it works is you have to teach the machine what to look for. And how do you do that? You build an environment where the machine sees one of two forms of data. It either sees data that is supervised by a human or unsupervised by a human. Supervised machine learning has to do with set variables that are they're preset, and the human tells the machine this is how these variables interact with each other, and the human and the machine work together to create an algorithm. Unsupervised is actually it's a totally different machine learning model. Unsupervised has to do with introducing a very large data set to a machine with as many variables as are available and letting the machine start to identify the correlations. And the machine will then create correlations and share them with a human that the human then can say, yes, those correlations are good. And here are some examples of the result we're looking for in relation to those variables. Both models today are being used for prescriptive analytics. The great news for us advertisers is the following. The world of advertising produces an immense amount of data. The variables of success are largely the same regardless of what we are advertising. So you can use something like a supervised linear regression model to create a prescriptive analytics environment, and it's very doable. I know that started to drag us down the rabbit hole. I will just say that if you are serious about your advertising and you want to make a lot of result with it and you want to continuously make it better, using the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning is your next step. If you have everything else that we just shared dialed in, and if you don't, that's okay. Dial those in first. Once you've got your view set up, once you got your UTM hierarchy set up, then you can start leaning into some of this other stuff.
And that is a great way to end this event, guys. Full stop. So Ellie and Abtin, thank you so much for your time today. We can't, if anybody does have a question, we can't hang on it. I just want to stay tight for anybody who watches this recording. Nothing smart is being said from this point forward. You can close your laptop and I'll go home. But Ellie and Abtin, thank you so very much for your time today. There will be more of these and they are going to get geekier. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to keep going. So stay tuned. Make sure to sign up to our email list. You're already on it if you've joined. And we'll keep getting geeky over here so that we can teach you guys how to advertise better.
Yes, Tyler, we definitely will.
What did Tyler say?
Will you make the recording available? 100%.
Yeah, we'll send this to everybody. And for the people who didn't come, they'll get it too. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets to see our faces. But again, you guys did awesome. Thank you both. You can all go back to work and we'll see you next time. Signing out from Model B, the best tech-enabled advertising agency in the entire world. Goodbye.
See ya.
Yeah.